negotiate, he wanted more money. I don't blame him. I would have wanted more money too. And so we had to pay up a little bit.
Living in the shadow of a globally renowned father is a complex, sometimes challenging experience that Franklin Graham knows all too well. As the eldest son of Billy Graham, one of the most iconic and influential evangelists in history, Franklin's life has been under intense public scrutiny, shaped by a legacy that looms large in both his personal and spiritual journey. Billy Graham's ministry touched millions of people, spreading messages of hope, faith, and redemption that reverberated across nations and generations. For Franklin, however, living with the weight of such immense expectations proved to be both a blessing and a burden. While he admired his father's faith and achievements, Franklin also found himself questioning the path laid before him and searching for his own identity. Early life in the shadow of greatness. From a young age, Franklin was exposed to the global influence of his father. Billy Graham was not just a pastor. He was a cultural icon, a man whose voice carried authority and whose presence commanded respect. His crusades, broadcast on television and radio, reached audiences that numbered in the millions, and his influence extended beyond the church, touching the realms of politics, social issues, and international diplomacy. As the eldest son of this larger-than-life figure, Franklin's life was always in the spotlight, and with that came immense pressure. The expectations were clear. Franklin was expected to follow in his father's footsteps, to carry on the Graham family legacy, and to continue the work that Billy had begun. However, as a young man, Franklin found it difficult to embrace the lifestyle that his father had championed. Billy Graham's life was marked by an unwavering commitment to faith, discipline, and integrity, qualities that he instilled in his children. But Franklin, at least in his youth, was not interested in following this prescribed path. In fact, he actively rebelled against it. The young Franklin Graham struggled to reconcile his own identity with the immense legacy that loomed over him. The path to becoming a preacher, let alone filling his father's shoes, seemed overwhelming, and Franklin, like many young people, sought to assert his independence. A rebellious youth. During his teenage and young adult years, Franklin's rebellion took many forms. He rejected the rigid, faith-centered lifestyle that defined his father's life, and instead gravitated toward a more carefree and rebellious existence. He experimented with smoking, drinking, and partying, behaviors that were at odds with the values of the evangelical community in which he was raised. These choices, while seemingly a bid for autonomy, also reflected Franklin's deep internal conflict. He felt trapped by the weight of his family's expectations and, at times, disconnected from the faith that had shaped his upbringing. The pressure to conform was suffocating, and Franklin acted out in ways that both challenged and defied the norms set by his family. As his defiance escalated, so did the tension within the Graham family. His parents, particularly his mother, Ruth Bell Graham, were heartbroken by his behavior. They had raised Franklin and his siblings with the belief that they were part of a greater spiritual mission, and Franklin's rejection of this mission was painful to witness. Yet, despite the frustration and sorrow that his rebellion caused, Franklin continued down his own path. His desire for independence and personal freedom drove him further from the values that defined his father's life. Despite his resistance to the expectations placed upon him, Franklin never stopped grappling with the legacy of Billy Graham. His love for his father was undeniable, but the idea of following in Billy's footsteps felt almost impossible. Franklin's path was not just about rejecting his father's example. It was about finding his own way in the world. For a time, he felt as if he could not live up to the impossible standards set by the public and his father. He longed to carve out a life that was authentically his own, away from the shadow of his father's fame and the scrutiny of the public eye. A spiritual awakening. In his early 20s, however, Franklin experienced a profound moment of spiritual awakening that would change the course of his life. While traveling through Europe, he made a trip to Jerusalem, where he had what he later described as a divine intervention. It was during this trip that Franklin felt a powerful call to ministry, one that would ultimately lead him to embrace his faith and dedicate his life to serving others. The moment in Jerusalem was a turning point for Franklin, a realization that he had been running from the very thing that could bring him peace and fulfillment. It was in that sacred city that he recommitted himself to the Christian faith, realizing that true freedom could only come through surrendering to God's purpose for his life. Franklin's conversion experience was not a dramatic, instant transformation. Rather, it was a gradual process of coming to terms with his faith, his family legacy, and his own identity. Over the next few years, he began to embrace the values that had been instilled in him from a young age, though he also made them his own. This process was not without challenges. Franklin's decision to enter the ministry, to lead the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, BEA, and to carry on his father's work, was met with scrutiny from both the public and the media. Many expected him to be a carbon copy of Billy Graham, but Franklin was determined to forge his own path. He wanted to honor his father's legacy, but also leave his own imprint on the world. Leading the legacy. Franklin's journey into ministry was not an easy one. He had to grapple with the public's expectation that he would fill his father's shoes, an expectation that was often unrealistic and unfair. Billy Graham had built a global empire of faith, and Franklin was expected to uphold that empire with the same grace, poise, and authority that his father had shown. However, Franklin's style of ministry was different. While his father had been known for his gentle demeanor and apolitical stance, Franklin was more outspoken, more direct, and more willing to take on social and political issues. His approach to ministry often sparked controversy, and many questioned whether he was truly capable of continuing the work his father had begun. One of Franklin's most notable contributions to the family legacy was his leadership of Samaritan's Purse, a humanitarian organization that provides aid to those suffering from natural disasters, poverty, and disease. Through Samaritan's Purse, Franklin has been able to respond to global crises, helping those in need around the world. This work has taken him to some of the most troubled parts of the world, including war zones, disaster-stricken areas, and places plagued by disease. Franklin's role as the head of Samaritan's Purse has allowed him to demonstrate the compassion and grace that he had once resisted, and it has given him an opportunity to serve others in ways that are not always visible or glamorous. At the same time, Franklin continued to lead the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, where he carried on his father's work of preaching the gospel to millions of people. His approach to evangelism was different from his father's, but it was no less passionate. Franklin's focus on social issues and his willingness to speak out on political matters have made him a polarizing figure in the evangelical world. Some have criticized him for straying too far from his father's apolitical stance, while others have praised him for his willingness to address the pressing issues of our time. Regardless of the criticism, Franklin remains steadfast in his mission to share the message of Christ with the world, even if it means facing backlash and controversy. Health struggles and personal growth. Throughout his ministry, Franklin has faced numerous challenges, both personal and professional. One of the most significant challenges came in 2021, when he experienced a serious health crisis. Franklin was diagnosed with pericarditis, a condition in which the sac around the heart becomes inflamed, causing intense pain and difficulty breathing. The condition required emergency surgery, which took place at the Mayo Clinic. Franklin's family, friends, and supporters were deeply concerned for his well-being, and many offered prayers for his recovery. The health crisis was a wake-up call for Franklin. It reminded him of the fragility of life and the importance of relying on faith during times of uncertainty. During his recovery, Franklin reflected on his own mortality and the need to trust in God's plan. He also developed a deeper empathy for those suffering from health issues and crises. His experience with illness gave him a new perspective on the challenges that others face especially those who are struggling with life-threatening conditions. In the months following his surgery, Franklin spoke openly about his health struggles and the lessons he had learned. He shared how his faith had sustained him during his recovery, and he emphasized the importance of relying on God in times of adversity. Rather than retreating from his ministry, Franklin chose to continue his work with Samaritan's Purse and the BEA. His health crisis only strengthened his resolve to serve others, and he used his experience to inspire those who were facing their own challenges. Coping with loss and family tragedy. Franklin's life has been profoundly shaped by loss, particularly the death of his father, Billy Graham, in February 2018. The passing of such a legendary figure left a void not only in the world of evangelism, but also in Franklin's personal life. Billy Graham was not only Franklin's father, but also his mentor, role model, and guide. The loss of Billy was an incredibly emotional and spiritual challenge for Franklin, and it forced him to confront the weight of his own responsibilities. In addition to the loss of his father, Franklin also had to cope with the death of his mother, Ruth Bell Graham, in 2007. Ruth was a quiet but powerful influence on Franklin's life, and her death left a significant emotional gap. Ruth had been a constant source of support and wisdom for Franklin, particularly during his rebellious years. She was the one who had grounded him in faith and taught him the values of humility, service, and compassion. Her passing, coupled with the loss of his father, left Franklin with a deep sense of grief and longing. However, Franklin's experiences with loss have also given him a unique perspective on the human experience of grief. His public reflections on the pain of losing his parents have resonated with many of his followers, who see in Franklin a leader who understands the challenges of navigating loss and finding hope in the midst of it. Through his own journey of grief, Franklin has learned the importance of cherishing family relationships and holding on to the hope of eternal life. His faith has helped him to find comfort in the belief that he will one day be reunited with his loved ones. A legacy of resilience and faith. Franklin Graham's journey has been one of transformation, resilience, and deepening faith. He has learned to navigate the complexities of living in his father's shadow while forging his own path. His early years of rebellion and defiance gave way to a life of ministry and service, and his struggles with health and loss have only deepened his empathy and compassion for others. Franklin's life is a testament to the power of faith, the importance of personal growth, and the enduring legacy of love and service passed down from one generation to the next. Today, Franklin Graham continues to lead with conviction, carrying on the work of his father while making his own mark on the world. His journey has not been without challenges, but it is through these challenges that he has found strength and purpose. In many ways, Franklin's story is one of redemption, a story that demonstrates the transformative power of grace and the resilience of the human spirit.